Welcome to another episode of Tom Kennedy Science, where we explore the universe. And today we are going to explore proteins. So following along with our Bio for Health related science class for college freshmen, we're going to talk about, well, what exactly is a protein and protein structure. And then we're going to get into the various roles of proteins. And I'm going to have a little bit of abbreviated on the roles of proteins. They do so many different things, but I'll talk about the highlights here. So first of all, what is this thing that we call a protein? Well, first of all, they're one of the four macromolecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. They are also a polymer, which means they are made up of building blocks. Now, you may hear the term polypeptide. That's just a whole bunch of those building blocks strung together, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then proteins are incredibly varied. They come in many shapes and sizes. And like I said, they are the workhorses of our cells for life in general, right? Because they perform so many different functions based on their structure. And importantly, every protein that's ever been made on this planet has been made in a ribosome inside of a cell. And ribosomes are these large molecular structures inside of cells made up of proteins and a special kind of RNA called ribosomal RNA. And every protein ever made right here in the ribosomes. So pretty cool. And a really active cell might have millions of active ribosomes. Okay, so if a protein is a polymer, then the monomers, the building blocks, are the amino acids. And this is a generalized structure of an amino acid. You've got NCC right across the middle there. That middle carbon is attached to a hydrogen. It's also attached to an amine or an amide group on the end and a carboxyl group. Now, you notice I got COO minus. That is actually more correct inside of our cells because usually that hydrogen pops off that carboxyl group and goes around and is attracted to that nitrogen. And the R, that is the side chain that determines the type of amino acid. That does not stand for any particular type of element. And in general, we usually say there are about 20 amino acids used by all life. Now, there are hundreds of different types of amino acids, but when it comes to animals, we use 20. Now, for those of you that want to get a broader picture of all living things, there's actually about 22 amino acids, but for us, there's 20 that we use. And each of these amino acids has a unique side chain. And these side chains, we can broadly classify them as being hydrophobic. They won't dissolve in water, or they are hydrophilic, which means that they will interact with water and other things that are hydrophilic as well by forming hydrogen bonds, or things that are actually charged. And those can actually form a stronger bond, making those proteins even stronger. Now, you probably have heard the term essential amino acid. Now, when it comes to nutrition, essential means you have to have it, but you can't make it, all right? So we have 9 of these essential amino acids. Our cell metabolisms can make the other 11. And if you're a plant, you can make all 20 of your amino acids. So we can get amino acids that we need from plants, and of course, meat, chicken, rice, beans, things like that. So there's lots of ways to get all of the essential amino acids that we need from our diet. Okay, let's look at protein structure because it's the 3-dimensional shape of proteins that give them their function. So we start with amino acids. They are linked together using a dehydration or condensation reaction. We got a OH and a hydrogen. This is going to come out as water, and then we're going to form a peptide bond right there. And there's our peptide bond right here between this carbon with a double bond to this oxygen and the nitrogen right there. And like I said, that forms a peptide bond. And these are actually pretty strong, and they help hold these amino acids together. So whenever we start linking these amino acids together, we say that forms the primary structure. And this is just the sequence of amino acids. And these chains of amino acids form what is called a polypeptide. So because all proteins are made of amino acids, all proteins are polypeptides, but not all polypeptides are proteins, right? And we'll come back to that. And then as you link all these amino acids together, forming a polypeptide, we call that the polypeptide backbone. Now, we also have secondary structure, and it's the amine group, the nitrogen and the oxygen will form hydrogen bonds, and they'll form the secondary structure of beta sheets and alpha helices. And this is just folding of that polypeptide backbone. And this is important for helping proteins achieve their three-dimensional structure. Now, all proteins have primary, secondary, and tertiary structures. Tertiary structure is basically, this is our three-dimensional structure of a protein, of many proteins anyways, and they are formed by the interactions of the side chains. Okay, so these polypeptides are going to fold and they're going to form biologically active proteins here. Now, some really large and complex proteins actually have what is called quaternary structure. And quaternary structure is when you're made of two or more polypeptides. So for example, hemoglobin, that's in our blood that carries oxygen around to all the parts of our body, hemoglobin is actually made up of 4 different subunits. So it's got quaternary structure. And then let's look at this really big, this is a type of tumor suppressing gene, or a protein, I mean. And if you look closely, it's huge, right? You can see arrows in there. And those arrows represent the directionality of the amino acid. So it's going nitrogen, carbon, carbon, nitrogen, carbon, carbon, right? So the carboxyl groups are on the end. So the arrows are pointing toward the COO, the carboxyl groups. And then this one also has a quaternary structure, and the different colors represent the different polypeptides coming together to make this one very large protein. So just to be clear here, polypeptides are linear chains of amino acids, whereas a protein is a functional molecule made of one or more polypeptides that are folded into a specific shape. Now, proteins, like I said, structure is everything for these things, and they have evolved to work under very specific environmental conditions. So they have very narrow ranges, or often, some can be more broad, but they have a specific range of salinity, pH, and temperature where they are optimized for their functionality. So the proteins inside of a mammal like yourself, they work best around 98 to 100 degrees, maybe 100, 102. Enzymes inside of our stomach are very much optimized toward the acidic conditions inside of our cells. Inside of our stomach. And enzymes in our blood are optimized at about 7.4 pH. Now, when you take a protein and you get it out of that optimal range, what can happen is they can denature. So changes in salinity, changes in pH, changes in temperature cause proteins to denature. And when a protein denatures, they basically fall apart, right? They unfold. When they unfold, they lose their biological function. And you've seen this a lot. If you've ever cooked an egg, you start adding some heat to an egg, and when it cools off, it scrambles it, there it is. But when it cools off, it doesn't revert back to the liquid stage. So this is a real problem for our health. Like if you get heat stroke, which, in like parts of our country, we're getting problems with heat stroke, especially in Phoenix. If you get too hot, your proteins begin to denature. And when you cool back off, they may not go back to their original state, and that can cause permanent damage. Okay, now, very briefly, the roles of proteins. There's a lot, all right? They do so much. But importantly, they form enzymes. And enzymes are these little engines of life that speed up chemical reactions. So if you've got a catabolic reaction, you're going to break down glucose into smaller molecules. There's enzymes at every step. If you're going to take a very small molecule and you're going to build a lipid out of it, a fat, there's enzymes involved. So enzymes are involved with much of our catabolism and anabolism. Like I said, our entire metabolism, trillions upon trillions of chemical reactions taking place every second of every day, facilitated by enzymes. Many of them are proteins, and they are just coordinated in their efforts. They're highly regulated. And the thing about an enzyme is they get used over and over and over again. So they're not going to get used up in the chemical reactions, okay? In fact, some enzymes can carry out hundreds of thousands, or even a million chemical reactions in like a second, right? So they're very fast. Of course, muscles. Proteins are involved with muscles and movement. So muscles are a contractile protein. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger from Conan the Barbarian showing off his muscles. And muscles enable animals to move, and that is a unique structure to animals. Only us have muscles made up of mostly actin and myosin, but down at the cellular level, we also have various motor proteins that make a flagellum move, right? Or help transport organelles around a cell. So there's all kinds of little molecular motor proteins down at the cells that are also involved with movement as well. Oh yeah, I had to do it. If we're going to talk about Conan the Barbarian, Predator, Terminator, and yeah, these are just fun, fantastic movies. Um, yeah, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger. What can I say? Oh, and Commando on the right there. All right. Proteins are also used for structural support. So as an animal, we make a protein called collagen, which is built outside of our cells. And collagen basically holds animals together. So your skin, that's being held together by collagen. And then your muscles are attached to your bones by tendons. And your bones are connected to each other with ligaments. Now, we also have elements of our cytoskeleton, like actin filaments, which we also see in muscles, keratin fibers. There's our fingernails and our hair. It's made out of keratin, and also help hold our skin together as well. And then we also have microtubules that help give our cells various shape as well. So yeah, structural support proteins are very involved with that. I'm a multicellular organism made up of trillions of cells, right? So all those cells have to have coordinated effort, right? They got to be doing different things. They got to express different genes at different times, turn different genes off, and respond to changes in the environment. And the way you do that is through cell signaling. My cells are constantly talking to each other, both right next to each other and long distance. And so proteins can act as both the cell signal and the receptor. And in fact, a cell membrane is like 50% proteins, and they have many different types of receptors on them. And they also have protein pumps as well that are used to maintain cell membrane potentials. They're also used in defense as well. So there's these things called antigens. Antigens our bodies can recognize as not us, like the A, B, and O blood groups. If you're A and you get the B antigen, your body will say, that's not you, that's not me. It's not it recognizes it as not itself and will produce antibodies to attack it. So things like viruses and bacteria have unique antigens on their surface that our bodies will attack by producing the antibodies that mark them for destruction. All right. And then also regulation of gene expression. So, we make tens of thousands of different types of proteins that are the information to make those proteins is stored in our DNA. So we have proteins that actually make RNA, right? It's called RNA polymerase. Proteins also copy DNA as well. But then we also have these other proteins. They're called transcription factors, and they help the RNA polymerase, this protein that makes RNA, land on the right part of our DNA to transcribe, to basically start making the RNA for the right gene. And then also, because our cells are differentiated into 200 different types of cells, we take all of our DNA, and for each cell type, we package it uniquely. And part of that is we wrap it around proteins called histones. So as you can see, proteins have a lot of function. They do so much. And in fact, one thing I hadn't even talked about is proteins also form pumps in our membranes that are constantly moving sodium out, potassium in, pumping protons, pumping calcium, acting as channels. So they're involved with all kinds of transport as well. All right, so there we go. Proteins are incredibly important for us. They are truly the workhorses of our cells. So I hope you learned something, and until next time, stay curious.